Parents planned another family trip I dread, so I finally said no. Now I'm the villain, and they're saying I'm abandoning them and don't care about family anymore. I, 27F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family, not in a dramatic, toxic way, but in a we just don't vibe kind of way. My parents, 53M and 51F, are obsessed with family togetherness. They genuinely believe that nothing matters more than spending time as a unit, and they reinforce that belief by planning massive family vacations multiple times a year. These trips always include me, my sister, 29F, and her husband, 31M, and my younger brother, 24M. And every single time, my parents insist on footing the bill. It sounds like a dream, right? A free vacation, all expenses paid, just hanging out with the people who raised you? Except, I hate these trips. I dread them. I would honestly rather stay home and stare at my ceiling for a week than endure another one. It's not because I hate my family. I don't. But we are fundamentally very different people, and when you force very different people into close proximity for an extended period of time, it's only a matter of time before things start to crack. First, there's my mom, who is an obsessive planner. She treats these vacations like military operations, wake-up calls at 7 a.m., breakfast at 8, sightseeing from 9 to 12, lunch at this specific restaurant, followed by pre-approved leisure time. Which is really just her dragging us to places she wants to go. If anyone dares suggest changing the plan, she gets visibly upset. Like, teary-eyed upset. One time, my sister casually mentioned wanting to stop at a cafe before our scheduled tour, and my mom looked like she'd just been personally betrayed. Then there's my dad, who is obsessed with politics and insists on turning every meal into a heated debate. It doesn't matter what we're eating, steak, pizza, pancakes, by the time we're done, the mood is ruined. My BIL is on the complete opposite end of the political spectrum, and instead of just letting it go, my dad sees this as an opportunity to have a discussion. Spoiler, it is never a discussion. It is a loud, uncomfortable argument that makes everyone else at the table want to crawl under it. My sister is over it, but she still plays along. She complains about these trips in private, but the second we're all together, she falls in line. My brother? Checked out entirely. He barely speaks to anyone, just sits on his phone the whole time, probably counting down the seconds until he can leave. And me? I just try to survive. But it's exhausting. There is no personal space, no quiet moments, no way to just relax without someone commenting on it. My parents always book a single big house or adjoining hotel rooms, so we are never apart. If I go for a walk alone, my mom immediately texts me, "Are you okay? Are you mad at us?" If I stay in for the night, my sister will poke her head in and say, "Why are you being so antisocial?" I cannot win. And then, of course, there's the guilt trip. If I so much as hint that I don't want to go, my parents immediately turn it into a thing. My mom will say, "You know, we won't be around forever. One day, you'll wish you had this time with us." My dad will shake his head and remind me, family is the most important thing in life. My sister will chime in with, "It's just a week. Can't you just deal with it?" But the thing is, I did try to deal with it. I tried for years. And then last year, we went on a trip to Florida, and it was an absolute disaster. From the second we landed, my dad and BIL were at each other's throats about politics. My mom was freaking out because no one was following her itinerary. My sister, who usually tries to keep the peace, snapped at dinner and screamed at everyone. My brother ignored everything, just scrolling through his phone like he was watching a completely different show than the rest of us. And then, the final straw, the moment I knew I had to get out. We were sitting at dinner, and my dad made a snide comment about something political. I won't get into details, but let's just say it was bad. My BIL, already frustrated from days of this, slammed his fork down and said, "You know what? I'm done with this bullshit." My sister immediately burst into tears. My mom gasped like she had just witnessed a murder. My dad? He laughed. He actually sat there, chuckling, like he had won some kind of game. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and immediately started looking up flights. For days into a 7-day trip, and I knew I couldn't do it anymore. I faked a work emergency, told everyone I had to leave early, and booked the soonest flight home. My parents were livid. My mom wouldn't even say goodbye to me. When I got back, they barely spoke to me for weeks. Even when they finally did start talking to me again, my mom kept bringing it up in that passive-aggressive way she does. Well, I guess you just don't value family the way we do. And now, they're planning another trip. This time, a ski vacation. And they assume I'm going. They've already sent me the dates, the itinerary, and the Airbnb listing. My mom even texted, "I booked you a room with a great view. You're going to love it." And I do not want to go. I feel physically ill just thinking about it. But how do I say no without causing another massive fallout? Because at this point, I'm starting to think that no matter what I do, no matter how I phrase it, I'm going to be the villain in this story. Update 1. Well, I did it. I told my parents I'm not going on the ski trip. And just as I expected, it did not go over well. I called my mom first because I figured it would be easier to talk one-on-one rather than deal with a full-blown family group chat explosion. I kept it simple. I told her I was really grateful that they always plan these trips and that I appreciated the generosity, but I just couldn't make it this time. Silence. For a good 5 seconds. Then she said, in the saddest voice imaginable, "Oh, so you just don't want to spend time with us anymore?" I knew this was coming. I knew it. So I tried to get ahead of it and said, "No, that's not it at all. I just need a different kind of vacation this year." Which, okay, was maybe not the best way to phrase it, because she immediately latched onto that and said, "A different kind of vacation? With different people?" At that point, I could feel the guilt creeping in, but I held my ground. I told her that these trips had been really overwhelming for me, and that while I loved them, spending an entire week in a group setting like that was just too much. And that's when the real manipulation kicked in. She sighed and said, "I just don't understand. We've always done these trips as a family. Your sister and brother don't seem to have a problem with it. It just feels like you're pulling away from us." I told her I wasn't pulling away. I told her that just because I didn't want to go on one trip didn't mean I didn't love them. I even suggested that maybe we could do something smaller, just a weekend visit or a dinner when they were in town. Her response? More silence. Then a clipped, "Well, I guess if that's how you feel, there's nothing I can do about it." And that was the end of the call. An hour later, my sister texted me, "Mom's really upset. She thinks you don't want to be part of the family anymore." And then my dad, "Didn't expect this from you. Pretty disappointing." And the cherry on top? My mom sent a group text saying, "Just so everyone knows, my name won't be joining us on the trip. I guess she has better things to do." So yeah, it's exactly what I thought would happen. And now I'm sitting here wondering if I should have just sucked it up and gone, because honestly, the guilt is crushing. Update 2. So, I held my ground, and things got so much worse. After the initial guilt trip from my mom, the passive-aggressive group text, and my dad's disappointed message, I figured they just needed time to cool off. I thought maybe after a few days, it would blow over. I was wrong. 2 days later, my mom called me again. I almost didn't pick up, but I figured it was better to get it over with. She started off calm, too calm, honestly, asking if my decision was final. I said yes. That's when she hit me with, "Well, your father and I have been talking, and we don't understand why you'd rather spend your vacation with friends instead of your own family." Friends. The funny thing? I never even said I had other plans. I literally just told them I wasn't going. But apparently, in their minds, not going equals choosing other people over them. I told her that wasn't the case, and that I just wanted some time to myself. That's when she dropped the real bombshell. "I just hope you won't regret this one day. I hope, when we're gone, you don't look back and wish you had spent more time with us. Are you kidding me?" She weaponized her own mortality to get me to go on a ski trip. At this point, I was getting pissed. I told her, as respectfully as possible, that I wasn't going to spend my entire life making decisions based on the fear of future guilt. That I loved them, but I needed to start prioritizing my own well-being, too. She went quiet again. Then she hit me with another classic. "Well, I just hope this isn't the beginning of you cutting us out of your life." I could feel my blood pressure rising. I told her, again, that skipping one vacation didn't mean I was disowning the family. That if she wanted to spend time together, we could do a shorter trip or a visit that wasn't a week-long nightmare in a shared house. And then, after another painfully long pause, she said, "Your sister and brother are really hurt too. They don't understand why you don't want to be with us." Ah, yes, dragging my siblings into it. Because clearly, this whole thing wasn't dramatic enough yet. I told her I'd talk to them myself, then ended the call before I said something I'd regret. 10 minutes later, my sister called. I picked up, already exhausted, and she went straight into it. She told me Mom had been crying. That she didn't get why I was making such a big deal out of this. That yes, the trips were sometimes frustrating, but that's just family. That I was being selfish. And that's when I snapped. I told her I was so tired of being expected to just suck it up every time. That it wasn't just a trip for me, it was a full week of walking on eggshells, getting dragged into fights, never getting a moment alone, and feeling like I couldn't even breathe without someone questioning it. That if she could deal with that, good for her. But I couldn't anymore. She got quiet. Then, in a softer voice, she said, "I mean, yeah, I guess it does get kind of exhausting sometimes." That was the first time I felt like someone in my family might actually get it. But of course, she ended with, "Still, I just wish you'd come. It won't be the same without you." And now, here I am, feeling like absolute garbage. I know I did the right thing by setting this boundary, but I also feel like I just ripped a hole in my family dynamic that's never going to fully close. Update 3. Well, it finally happened. The nuclear meltdown I was dreading. And somehow, it was even worse than I expected. After my last conversation with my sister, I really thought things might settle down. She at least seemed to somewhat understand where I was coming from, even if she still wanted me to go. I figured maybe, just maybe, my family would accept my decision and move on. I was so wrong. Yesterday, I got a call from my dad. He doesn't call often. He usually lets my mom handle the emotional stuff, but when he does, it means he's serious. Against my better judgment, I picked up. No hello. No small talk. Just, So this is really the hill you want to die on? Excuse me? I wasn't even sure how to respond. I told him, it's not a hill I'm dying on, Dad. It's just a vacation I don't want to go on. He sighed loudly, like I had just told him I was running off to join a cult. Then he hit me with, you know, your mother hasn't stopped crying since you told her. She thinks you don't love us anymore. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about the trip anymore. To them, this wasn't me skipping one vacation. This was me rejecting them entirely. I tried, again, to explain that I loved them, that I wasn't cutting them off, that I just needed to make choices that were good for my own mental health. I even told him I'd be happy to visit them another time, under different circumstances. And his response? Yeah, well, maybe next time we'll check with you before we make plans for our own family. That stung. I told him I wasn't trying to be difficult, but I wasn't going to be guilt-tripped into doing something that made me miserable. He went quiet for a second. Then he dropped the real bombshell. Well, I hope you know that your mother and I are rethinking whether we should keep paying for these trips at all. If one of our kids doesn't even want to be there, then what's the point? I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because the manipulation was so blatant at this point, it was almost comical. I told him, if you're only paying for these trips to force us into spending time together, then maybe you should stop. And then, I kid you not, he hung up on me. I sat there, stunned. Not even mad, just tired. I knew they'd be upset, but I didn't think it would escalate like this. Then, a couple of hours later, my sister texted me. Welp, you broke them. I asked her what she meant, and apparently, my mom had gone full meltdown mode. She told my sister and brother that she felt like she was losing me, that she didn't know what she did to make me abandon the family. My dad was storming around the house, saying things like, well, I guess we'll just cancel the whole damn trip then. My brother, for the first time in his entire life, actually weighed in and texted me. It's why this is such a big deal. But maybe just come for a few days so they shut up. And honestly, that text almost broke me. Because for a split second, I thought, yeah, maybe I should just go, just to make this all stop. But then I realized, this is exactly why I needed to say no in the first place. Because this should not be the reaction to someone opting out of a vacation. This level of emotional manipulation, guilt, and straight-up tantrum throwing is not normal. My parents are acting like I announced I was never speaking to them again, when in reality, I just said I didn't want to go on a one-week trip. And the fact that my brother, who literally never cares about anything, would rather I go just so they'll stop whining about it? That says everything. So no, I'm not going. I'm not giving in. If this is how they're going to react to a simple boundary, then maybe it's time they learn that they can't just manipulate me into doing whatever they want. Will this permanently change our relationship? Maybe. Will my mom ever stop crying about it? Doubtful. But for the first time in my life, I'm standing up for what I want. And that has to count for something.